Are you lonesome tonight? Do you miss me tonight? Are you sorry we drifted apart? Does your
Hi guys.
Welcome back, guys.
Welcome,
Significant lovers.
significant lovers. We are two cousins. My name is Mel.
And I'm Kel.
And we are continuing our saga that Kelly had started a couple weeks ago.
Yes, we are. We are picking back up. I hope you guys are still interested. But, this chapter is very different from the other one, I would say. We started with Debbie Reynolds and Eddie Fisher.
Mm-hmm.
Then we moved on to Eddie Fisher and Elizabeth Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
And now we are moving on to Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton.
Married twice.
Yes, they were called many times by the press the marriage of the century,
Oh.
20th century. And yeah, their claim to fame is that they were married twice. Why did that happen? Did they end up together? No. But it's a really crazy story. I've been in so deep in the research recently. I'm losing my mind. But it's really fun, so I hope you guys enjoy it. And I wrote down this quote that Elizabeth Taylor said once. She said in her biography, "Since I was a little girl, I believed I was a child of destiny, and if that is true, Richard Burton was surely my fate." Just to set the tone for the episode.
Interesting. I wonder if she kept believing that.
You know what? I kind of think she did.
Well, to marry someone twice, how many people can say that they've done that? That's pretty interesting. I mean,
know.
I also got divorced twice, so can we skip ahead to the poll that you asked people? Because I think it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah, so this isn't the first time we've covered a couple broke up and got back together many times. And I'm thinking John Mayer and Katy Perry, they broke up and got back together many times. Who else? There's been
Brenda
some.
Song and Trace Cyrus broke up and got back together a lot.
Yeah, I know there's been more. I asked our patrons a poll. I said, breaking up and getting back together, how many times is too many? And I only asked this 2 hours ago, but a bunch of you have already answered. And so 30% of you said once. Once we're over, it's over. 52% said 2 to 3 times. 13% said 3 to 5 times. And 4% said however many times it takes, life is complicated.
Ooh.
Yes. And Muna commented, I would almost say 2 times should be its own category. After 2 times, we done. I say at least 2 times because sometimes you can break up due to timing, like moving away from a city, but you meet up again later in life and still have chemistry. But even then, if it doesn't work out a second time, not meant to be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I do think that life is complicated. It's what are the reasons for the breakup, like Muna said.
So would you say the last choice?
No.
There's no number?
No, I think at a certain point, maybe 3 breakups is too many breakups. I mean, honestly, though, really, most couples I know, not everybody, there are some exceptions. Most couples I know, once they break up once, and then if they get back together, whatever the cause for that breakup was, unless it was something like distance or college or something.
Yeah.
When they get back together, I feel like it often doesn't last.
I agree. It does seem that way. It is also just a lot to go through. Having many breakups is very hard. And Muna, I appreciate you saying that because I once had a relationship where we broke up twice, and then I really was overthinking it afterward if I should have given it another shot. But yeah, two was, it's a lot to think, okay, it's over, you're rebuilding your self-esteem, you're really trying to think, okay, this is my life now, I'm single, you're restructuring your whole viewpoint, and then for you to get back together, it's so emotional and like a roller coaster, and it's really hard. I think the couples that break up 5 times, that's just a lot to put your heart through.
Exactly. And I feel like if you've already broken up many times, there's not as much keeping you together anymore, because they're like, well, we've already done it before, and then it maybe feels a little bit less permanent too. So the idea of saying I'm breaking up with you doesn't hold the same weight that it did in the beginning. So you're more likely to break up and then get back together and do it again, and it becomes a cycle. Also, I feel like it creates a weird power imbalance. Whoever did the breaking up, if it wasn't mutual, or whoever was broken up with, they're always going to feel inferior, maybe like they're walking on eggshells when you're back together.
And then also possibly the one that did end the relationship could be kind of seen like they're in the doghouse, like they're in trouble or something. Yeah. And like you caused problems, or I don't know. I think it's tough. I really admire the people that said once we're over, it's over. I don't know if I necessarily have the strength to be that kind of person, unless something like really bad happened. But I do really admire those people.
Well, because also I feel like in the beginning of a breakup, all you want is that person to come crawling back and be like, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake.
I know.
But now at this age, I do want to be like, if you're willing to lose me, like, that's it. Like, I want the stakes to be really high.
Good.
But...
Good. Yeah, I feel like that does require some confidence.
I think a lot of couples get back together too, because then they get out into the dating scene and they realize like, oh shit, this is not what I thought it would be, and they get really lonely. So then they just come crawling back for the wrong reasons, because they just want something that's familiar to them, like maybe Christmas is coming up or Valentine's Day. They want a date to something, and it's just easier for them to hit up their ex because they're not starting from ground zero. So I don't think that really works too.
Well, we'll see that in this couple for sure. They were together for 13 years.
Oh wow.
On and off. Yes. And yes, married twice. And they were insanely famous. I feel like we almost, us modern people, cannot almost comprehend how famous they were. Their only peers were the couple we just discussed, the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, Edward and Wallace. They hung out with them because they were on their same level and also were extremely hated by the public.
Oh, wow.
Scandalous. Yeah, they were a couple friends with them.
Wait, so were Liz and Dick extremely hated?
They were.
Oh.
They were. And as we discussed in the Eddie Fisher and Elizabeth Taylor episode, we'll have a little bit of overlap, and I'll try to fill you guys in if you didn't hear that episode. Liz and Dick, Richard and Elizabeth, their relationship started in Italy during the Cleopatra shoot, and that's when the term for paparazzi was coined, because they were in Italy, and it means buzzing insect, so it's just like their claim to fame. Yeah, but if I had to describe this couple in 3 words, I would say fiery.
We've heard that before.
Destructive. And jewels.
Jewels, okay.
Or bejeweled.
Bejeweled.
Yep, I just had to put it there. And yeah, a big source I used for this was the book Furious Love by Sam Kashner and Nancy Schoenberger, and I used some other like online sources and videos and stuff, but it was a really great book, so if you're at all interested in this couple, I really recommend it. I intended to just kind of like skim it and look for things, but I really got sucked in and read the whole thing, so it was great. Okay, I'm just going to do a little bit of a summary on Elizabeth Taylor, just in case someone didn't hear it last time, but she is an actress. Of course, they're both actors. She was born in England to American parents. She was a child star and then later went on to have adult roles. You know, you can kind of think of her like a Disney Channel star today. Yeah. Like, people grew up with her. She was very talented and beautiful. She started to become a little bit of a diva as a teenager and in her early 20s, and was seen as a real sex symbol once she transitioned to adult roles. She famously had 8 marriages, 7 husbands. So before Richard Burton, she was married to the hotel heir Conrad Nicky Hilton in 1950, and then the British actor Michael Wilding in 1952, and then the producer Mike Todd in 1957, who tragically died in a plane crash. And then the 4th husband was Eddie Fisher, as we've been talking about recently. He was married to her best friend Debbie Reynolds, that whole thing. She did have a lot of health issues. She did have a lot of health issues. I feel bad. In the last episode, I was like, oh, she's kind of over dramatic about things. I think maybe both can be true at the same time, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But she did have issues. I mean, I think when she was in the movie National Velvet, when she was young, which was about a girl that rides horses, she fell off a horse and she had back issues forever after that. And she had a lot of ovarian cysts, things like that.
Oh, yeah.
Then, as we said in the last episode, she had really bad pneumonia and was in a coma. And yeah, so she did have a lot of health issues throughout her life. And she was a very successful actress. She won the Academy Award for Best Actress in Butterfield 8. And that's before Richard Burton. And she was known for being pretty, quite a party girl. She drank a lot. She didn't really take good care of herself. She didn't eat very well. Drank a ton. I cannot say that enough.
Yeah.
But she was still very beautiful. Okay, so then Richard Burton. Who is he? An actor. A very esteemed actor. He was born November 10th, 1925. So he was a Scorpio, and she was a Pisces, by the way, if you guys are into that.
And so he was older than her.
He was, but he was actually only about 8 years older than her.
Okay, so we're getting closer.
Yeah, getting closer. He was from Wales. He grew up in a very large, pretty poor family in, oh my gosh, I forgot to look up how to say this. It's a Welsh town. Welsh is very hard to pronounce if you don't speak it. Pontrhydyfen, maybe is how you say it. It's a hilly, small mining town. He had 12 siblings.
Wow.
His father worked in a coal mine. Oh yeah, Elizabeth Taylor had one brother. And she was pretty wealthy, so they definitely were from different backgrounds. His father worked in a coal mine, his mother was a barmaid, and his father was a very serious alcoholic. Insanely, drink 12 drinks a day, very severe alcoholic. And Richard was only 2 when his mother died.
Oh my
shortly
God.
after giving birth to the 13th child. So,
oh my
it's a pretty rough childhood.
So his dad had to raise 13 kids?
But it sounds like his oldest sister primarily took care of him, and his brother too. So,
gosh,
all the siblings helped out. Richard was a great student, well, at least in English. He loved poetry and writing and reading. That's his lifelong passion. And his real name is actually Richard Jenkins.
Oh.
But he went by Richard Burton. This is kind of strange because that was his mentor's last name. So his schoolmaster was Philip Burton, and he saw a lot of potential in Richard and wanted to help him, and he took him in and helped him go to school to become an actor. And Richard became Philip Burton's legal ward and changed his last name to Richard Burton.
Oh, wow. So he kind of almost adopted him.
Yeah, it's very strange. And Richard's dad accepted it and was okay with it. But based on what I've read, it seems like Richard always felt kind of guilty about leaving his father and changing his last name, and then also later in life, leaving Wales. It seems like he always felt a little tortured about all of that. He turned his back on where he was from, you know? But he was very proud to be Welsh. He was known for being very handsome and charismatic, but also self-conscious of the pockmarks on his face, acne scars. So that's his one flaw. He had a deep love of poetry, Shakespeare, Wales, and liquor, and was known for having a very deep voice. And he was more of a stage actor in his 20s. He was known for acting in Shakespeare plays throughout the 1950s, and then he transitioned into the movies. And he was also notably a ladies' man, but interestingly, I read that he said that he tried homosexuality, but it didn't take.
Oh, that's really brave of him at that time to be open about that.
I know, it is really brave.
Didn't take.
Yeah, didn't stick. Yeah, he's a very serious actor. He was known for knowing all of his lines and even his co-star's lines on the first day. He just took it very seriously. When he met Elizabeth Taylor, I mentioned this in the last episode, but he was married to a Welsh woman named Sybil Williams. Well, Sybil Burton, because they were married, who was also Welsh and had been a stage actress, but she retired from the stage once they married, and they had two doctors.
Two doctors.
They might have. They had two daughters, Kate and Jessica. And Jessica had severe mental disabilities, actually, which is very hard, I think, for Sybil to deal with, because Richard was, as I said last time, pretty much always unfaithful.
Ugh.
To poor Sybil. But he would always come back to her, as she said. Richard was already drinking very heavily when he met Elizabeth, so it wasn't a new thing when they started getting together. But he also always felt, on top of the shame of leaving Wales and leaving his family, he always felt kind of ashamed about being an actor. He thought it wasn't a very noble pursuit and wanted to be a writer, but, I mean, he just kept doing it.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. But Richard and Elizabeth Taylor and Richard, Liz and Dick, how did they meet? Okay, as I said, they met on the set of Cleopatra that they both starred in, but they had actually encountered each other briefly before that. In 1953, so almost 10 years earlier, they had met at a Hollywood party, and Elizabeth apparently disliked him. She thought he seemed full of himself and that he talked too much, and he had apparently laughed out loud the first time he saw Elizabeth just because of how ridiculously beautiful she was. But I don't think they really talked that much or made too much of an impression. But yeah, then almost 10 years later, January 22nd, 1962, they met again on the set of Cleopatra, but they're both married. Apparently there was a lot of hemming and hawing before they actually spoke to each other on set. And then Richard said, "Has anybody ever told you you're a very pretty girl?" And I think he was kind of joking, but she thought it was a lame first line to say and was not impressed by him.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of sets you up. Because I guess you could say thank you, but then what if you're like, yeah, people have. Like, then you sound kind of conceited. You're like, some people, I guess.
Yeah, she was so confident, I'm sure. She had some clever response to that, but I know it's a weird thing to first say to somebody. But as they started acting together, they had a lot of chemistry and attraction to each other. And during a kissing scene in Cleopatra, they apparently kissed longer with each take. And yes, the director, Joseph Mankiewicz, shouted, "Would you two mind if I say cut?" And then said, "Does it interest you that it's time for lunch?" So they would just keep making out.
Oh my God. Can you imagine that? Like you're married, but you have feelings for somebody, but your job, it forces you to kiss that person. I feel like in a way I could never be an actor, because then it's like,
me neither.
You're just tempting what your body already feels or what you should be suppressing. And how can you then, if you're kissing on screen, like then forget about it?
I know. I feel like actors always try to act like that doesn't happen or it doesn't matter. Or they're like, oh, it's not romantic because there's all these guys on set and, you know.
Yeah, but they're always like, did you see that interview with Zendaya where someone said, you know, is it weird for you and Timothy to kiss? And she goes, I think it's our job. So it's not weird.
Come on.
Yeah. Okay,
it's
but
our
like
job.
most of us don't have a job where we have to kiss our coworker. So
clearly it happens because it's happening now.
Yes.
With Liz and Dick. Elizabeth ended up dragging her director's chair next to Richard's, and it stayed there throughout the rest of the shoot.
Okay, yeah.
So they're getting really close. I'm sure Eddie Fisher was having a meltdown. And then, yeah, they pretty much embarked on a full-on affair that the public soon knew about because there were pictures of them together, kind of like our TJ and Amy episode, you know, like people couldn't get enough of it. There were just countless magazine and newspaper stories written about them, and Vatican even published a letter denouncing them.
What?
Because they were just flagrantly, like, out in the open having an affair.
Oh my God. Wait.
A congresswoman in Georgia called on Congress to make Miss Taylor and Mr. Burton ineligible for re-entry to the United States on the grounds of undesirability.
Wait, and so how did people... Like paparazzi is how people knew about it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And then I think it was just becoming obvious, and people were just telling the press. But yeah, it was captured by paparazzi.
Well, I mean, I can understand why people are annoyed with them. I think it's going a little too far for the Vatican to be commenting in Congress, but the fact that they are shameless about it and they don't seem to feel guilty, like, at least have some decency. Do it behind closed doors. But if you don't even feel ashamed, geez, I mean, what precedent does that set for people? So,
and at this point, people were already annoyed with Elizabeth Taylor for the Debbie Reynolds thing, and then this happened. Just like, oh my God, what is happening to this country?
Yeah.
I think people were really panicking, not just because of what these two individuals were doing, but they thought it was like a reflection of, morals going down the toilet, like, the country changing. I think it was almost like a panic. Movies at the time were becoming more scandalous. I think it was just
that makes sense.
Confusing time for people.
I mean, we've talked about this, gossip being representative of society's values and morals. Yes. And so for any episode we do, I feel like there are people who are like, mind your business. That's their personal lives. At the end of the day, like, we are social creatures. And the reason we talk about these people is because it's like a warning to other people of what is socially acceptable in society. So if two people are very openly having an affair and people aren't commenting on it, then it's almost like, wait, is that okay to do? I feel like it creates a sense of panic, like you said, with like our morals just going down the toilet. So people feel compelled to be like, no, this is wrong. I want to say it's wrong because I don't want my husband doing the same thing. Like, I don't know.
People are nervous. Like, is this going to happen to me?
Yeah, exactly. It comes from an empathetic place, really.
It does. But it was getting out of hand. Actually, the Cleopatra director had received bomb threats.
Okay, that's too much.
And put detectives in the movie as extras to make sure everything was okay.
Damn.
Yeah, it was getting crazy. And as I mentioned in the last time we discussed Elizabeth Taylor, she would go back to Eddie. It was kind of back and forth, but eventually she decided she wanted to be with Richard. She didn't care about Eddie anymore. Richard was her future. Richard wasn't sure. He was always afraid to leave his wife Sybil. He felt really terrible about it.
Yeah.
He seemed more anguished about it based on the biographies I've read. And his daughter Jessica was facing possibly lifelong institution at the time for her disabilities.
Oh, gosh.
As I said last time, Sybil also attempted suicide, his wife, so it was just a really bad time.
Yeah.
And Elizabeth wrote in her biography, she said, I loved Richard so much that for the first time it was an unselfish love. I didn't want to marry Richard because I didn't want him to be unhappy. I didn't want Sybil to be unhappy. I would have been perfectly content to just talk to him on the phone every once in a while.
Oh my God, if I was Sybil, I would still not be okay with that.
And, I mean, yeah, she's trying to say that she would be with him in any way. Like, they didn't have to be together, but that's not really true because their affair did resume.
I don't trust her. I don't trust her at all.
It was physical.
I think she's just saying that because she wants to feel better about herself.
Right. Yeah.
I think, to be honest, sorry.
What?
I think someone like her doesn't know what selfish or selflessness is.
I know. I agree. But yeah, they had called off their affair briefly, but it resumed again because they started another movie together.
Oh my God, of course.
Called The VIPs. And, Mel, I meant to look up how some of these Welsh names are pronounced, and I didn't.
That's okay.
Wait.
I feel like it could be fun to just guess, and then if you're Welsh, you're like, oh no.
Just gonna go on Google Translate. Ifar. Okay, that feels kind of weird for me to say. Richard had a brother, Ifor, who he admired the most. Basically his favorite brother. He really looked up to him. And Ifor. Sometimes it feels kind of weird when you're speaking, English to say a word in another accent.
I know.
What I mean? It just feels phony. But anyway, his brother Ifor was furious when Richard was putting Sybil through this public affair. And him and his brother found themselves in a screaming match one day, shouting through the mail slot of the house. And his whole family disapproved of what he was doing. I mean, they were really serious Welsh Baptists as well, and they did not believe in divorce, and they were totally on Sybil's side, and were just really, really mad at Richard about this. So he started drinking even more every day, and people were getting worried about him. And there was this one story. So he is still with Sybil.
Yeah.
But he is seeing Elizabeth Taylor. One day, Richard and Sybil were at this intimate dinner party with another couple. I think it was just the four of them. And they were at the couple's house. And during dinner, Elizabeth kept calling their house to talk to Richard. And it was just really distressing for Sybil.
Wait, the party is taking place at their house? Richard and Sybil's?
It wasn't at Richard's house. It was at the other couple's house.
Oh, but so Elizabeth
somehow got the number and was calling there.
Oh, that's creepy.
I know.
Yeah, she's not like, okay, yeah, you want to talk to him on the phone every now and then? How about not when he's at a party with his wife?
I know.
That's not so innocent.
Eventually, Richard did decide to divorce Sybil.
Yeah.
To marry Elizabeth, but it took a lot of trial and error, starts and stops. When he first went to London to ask Sybil for a divorce, he broke down. He couldn't do it. And it seems like when he was with Sybil, he did want to be with her, but then when he was with Elizabeth, he wanted to be with Elizabeth.
Yeah.
You know? But Richard and Sybil did finally divorce December 5th, 1963, on the grounds of abandonment and cruel and inhumane treatment.
Oh, God.
I know. And Richard wouldn't see his daughters for 2 years after that.
Wow.
And Sybil actually didn't speak to him ever again.
Wow, good for her.
It's crazy. Never.
So how did he get to even see his daughters? Like through,
I know, I was wondering
third party?
that. There must have been.
Wow.
I still don't understand how she pulled that off.
Oh my God. I mean, that's really painful.
Yeah.
It's almost like he died in her perspective.
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, Elizabeth Taylor and Eddie Fisher haven't been officially divorced yet.
Oh my God.
Because Eddie Fisher was dragging his feet on the divorce papers. But it was finalized March 1964. It's crazy that everything with Eddie, all that was only like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
I just can't believe how much has happened.
Way too much.
So 10 days after divorce was finalized with Eddie Fisher, Elizabeth and Richard flew to Montreal, where they were married in a private ceremony. Elizabeth wore a $150,000 emerald and diamond necklace that Richard had given her, with matching earrings. It was Richard's second marriage and Elizabeth's fifth.
Oh my gosh.
And the next day, Richard resumed his role in Hamlet on stage in Toronto because he was, performing in Hamlet at the time. And apparently it was at this Toronto show that the term Dick and Liz, one word, was first used by Toronto newspapers to describe all the hoopla going on.
Dick and Liz.
Dick and Liz.
Dick and Liz.
Dick and Liz. And after that Toronto performance and after his curtain call, apparently he held out his hand to Elizabeth to join him on stage, and he called out, "I say, we will have no more marriages," and the audience cheered.
Okay. I mean...
Mel's not impressed.
I mean,
we know the ending.
I guess they're like relieved. I was going to say, imagine being one of Elizabeth's friends and you're like, every time you catch up with her, it's like something completely different. Like, oh my gosh, Liz, I'm so sorry your husband died. Yeah, I know. Next thing you know, she's telling you about her new man, Eddie. And like, wait a minute, wasn't that your friend Debbie's? And then I'm sure she didn't really have that many friends because people are scared. Like, they're like, oh no, like, she might get with my husband next. But then you're hearing about this Richard guy, like, it's way too much.
It's a lot. I just thought this was funny. It's not so much about their relationship with each other, but I guess it just shows what it was like at the time. So the Hamlet production was on tour. It was going to different cities, and they next flew to Boston. And apparently they had the worst crowds, mobs, fans surrounding them ever. There was like shouting, clawing at the airport and the hotel when they arrived. And at one point, Elizabeth was being pulled in opposite directions at the same time by people. And it was just insanity, all these crowds rushing around them. And Richard said, "I've never seen anything like this before. It's outrageous. We had crowds like this in Toronto, but police gave us adequate protection." And Elizabeth said, "I've encountered mobs all over the world, but nothing to this extent." And it's funny, I kept reading, like, even later in life that for some reason, Boston was the craziest place. Like, they got the most attention.
Wow.
The craziest fans. And we're from there, so it's just funny. Like, why?
I know, I wouldn't expect that.
They literally said that again later, like, Boston was the worst.
That's so funny, maybe because Boston is so Catholic, and so they're, like, upset about the divorce or something. They're, like, Catholic, but they're also, like, rough around the edges, and...
I know. Yeah, there's people screaming, yelling, trying to grab them. It's kind of scary.
Yeah. Wait, yelling,
Apparently
like,
Elizabeth...
with anger, or, like, just because they love them?
I think kind of both. I think I think mostly people were so excited to see them.
Yeah.
And then some people might have been like, I love you, but some people might have been booing them. A little of both. And during one of those Hamlet performances, a man stood up and booed Richard. And Richard was really thrown off by that. He'd never been booed before while performing, and afterward he was venting his anger to Elizabeth in the hotel room, and in anger he kicked the TV screen, slicing his toe, and it set off an enormous fight between them.
Slicing his toe?
Remember, TVs back then were, you know, like a glass
Yeah.
square. It wasn't the TVs we have now. He basically just stuck his foot into a window.
Oh my God.
And the journalist Richard Stern recalled visiting their hotel to interview Richard a different day, and when he arrived, they were having the loudest, he said, most tremendous fight you ever could imagine. But he also wrote, I had this feeling they really deeply loved each other.
I don't know. I mean, like, I feel like intensity like that is often romanticized.
Mm-hmm.
It's, like, sexy that they're, like, fighting and then they have, like, passionate sex and stuff. But I think, what's that proverb? Like, love is patient, love is kind. I don't know. Like, I think if you really love someone, you wouldn't be, like, punching things and throwing things. And,
I know.
like, almost in a way, it's physically threatening, even if you're not hitting them, to be violent like that. And I don't think that's really love, in my opinion.
They fought a lot.
I think it's selfish. I think it's, like, love in that, like, you want them to do what you want them to do or whatever, and like you want to be with them, but I don't think it's like love in a way that's selfless, like she had said earlier.
I know. Everything's about balance.
Yeah.
I mean, some fighting is okay, but when you're yelling and screaming almost every day, like, that is, I don't think that's good.
No.
And I personally don't like over-the-top displays of anger.
Me neither. Oh my God.
I think it's very childish.
But I guess some people do like that. Some people want that.
I think Elizabeth kind of loved it. Mm-hmm. She thought it was thrilling.
God, it's toxic though.
It's very toxic.
Like, just become I don't know, like, ride a motorcycle if you want a thrill. Like, go rock climbing. Like,
adrenaline rush.
Yeah, adrenaline rush. Go to La Push, go cliff diving. Like, Twilight.
To raise money for Philip Burton, so Richard Burton's mentor, somewhat adopted father, to raise money for his music and dramatic academy, Richard and Elizabeth did a poetry reading performance together, which is pretty cool. They just, were on stage and recited poetry, and there was a standing ovation when it was over, and they raised a lot of money, and they got a lot of offers to do more poetry readings, and afterward they got incredibly drunk. Of course.
Yeah, of course. Well, that probably... that probably contributed to their fights.
Yes, that's true. They went hand in hand. Weirdly, Eddie Fisher showed up after the performance to their hotel room and walked in while Richard and Elizabeth were in the middle of a fight.
Wait, was Eddie...
What is he doing there?
Was Eddie still married to Elizabeth at this point?
No.
Wait, he has no self-respect. Like, go home.
This reminds me... This literally happened in the Elvis and Anne Margaret episode, though. Like, Elvis just showed up.
Yeah.
In her hotel room one time.
That's,
so
like,
weird.
Scary. Like, what are you doing here? Okay, in the hotel room? Like, not just, like, in the hotel in the lobby.
Apparently the room. And he said her makeup, because this was in his book. Of course, maybe he made it up. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, maybe. But why is he... That's embarrassing.
I know. He wrote, her makeup smeared, her voice loud and shrill. Elizabeth was furious about something, and I thought, I was married to that woman, that wild thing, ... The battle was over, and they both got what they wanted. Burton was a superstar, and Elizabeth had someone else to pick up after her. And I guess Richard was still feeling really guilty about Sybil and his daughters, and he was sending thousands of pounds to his brothers and sisters in Wales, and he tried to find jobs for a lot of his siblings in the movie business, trying to support them the best that he could, I think because he felt so guilty. Okay, now we're in 1965. Richard began filming the movie The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, which also starred his former co-star and former lover, Claire Bloom. And Elizabeth was not happy about that at all. They had so him and this Claire Bloom actress had a passionate affair before Elizabeth, but while he was still married to Sybil. And yeah, Elizabeth was extremely nervous about this, and she made a point to always be on set of that film. And Richard was starting to have tremors and hand shaking from all of his drinking. So he was starting to have like, nerve damage.
How old is he at this point? Like in his 40s? Oh, he's born in the 20s.
65.
Yeah, in his 40s.
65. Yeah, born in 25. Yep. So he's 40. So that can happen, though, if you are an alcoholic. It can destroy your nerves. The tension between Elizabeth and his ex-lover, Claire, was taking a toll. And there were stories about Elizabeth and Richard having shouting matches in restaurants. Lots of stories of people witnessing them having all-out brawls, fights together, slapping. It's crazy because this is like the I think what they would remember is like their honeymoon phase, like when they were so happy, but there was a lot of fights.
That's not normal.
Then, I know, it's not normal. Guys, it's not normal. Elizabeth and Richard signed on to do another film together, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I actually watched this movie last night.
Oh.
Because I felt like I should see one of their movies. And in the movie, they play a marriage that reflected their own a lot. I could see it. They play this couple that drinks an insane amount. Like, throughout the whole movie, it's one of those movies that takes place over the course of just one night.
I love those.
They drink non-stop. It's insane. And they are screaming at each other, being so mean to each other. But then they'll, like, laugh and be weird. And it's quite bizarre, but I could see how that's kind of what they were like. Like, they were just
that's so interesting. It seems like they're pretty self-aware.
Yeah, very strange. They were really good in it, though. Meanwhile, I thought this was pretty cool to read about. His ex-wife Sybil actually opened the club Arthur in New York City, which became the go-to spot for well-known artists like Julie Andrews, Leonard Bernstein, Truman Capote, Princess Margaret. Have to keep mentioning
the
her.
new John Mayer comes up all the time.
She's our new John Mayer. And it's a coincidence I heard about this club recently. It's actually where it's believed mixing was first invented, like layering two turntables at the same time, where like one song fades into another.
Oh, that's so. Wait, shit, she's cool.
Yeah, so like this is basically where disco was invented.
Wow, wait, she's like leveling up after this breakup, though.
Yes, and then she actually remarried a rock musician.
Oh, wow.
So she's turning her life around.
Good for her.
Pretty cool. So yeah, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? It was a new type of role for Elizabeth. Like, she had always played this really glamorous woman, but even though she was only 33, she was already sort of being outshone by younger people. I mean, now it's the 60s. Like, this is the age of the hippie. The glamour of the 50s just wasn't that appealing to people anymore.
Yeah.
And in the movie, she plays a middle-aged woman. I think she plays someone like considerably older than she actually was, and she gained 25 pounds for the role.
Oh, wow.
And in the book I read, it said women had grown up alongside her as a child, then teenager, then in her 20s. Now, here was Elizabeth, suddenly older, heavier, disappointed, disillusioned, and drunk. Elizabeth herself would later observe that the woman that identified with her in a way that they did not identify with that other larger-than-life movie star, Marilyn Monroe, because Marilyn never went through menopause.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah, as I said, in the movie they go all at it, fighting at each other, all out fighting with each other. People did notice that during filming this movie, their marriage had never been better. Elizabeth said, "It was very cathartic because we would get all our shouting and bawling out on set and then go home and cuddle."
Oh, I can see that, I guess. Maybe, like, couples should do that if they're having a really tough time. Fake fights, yeah, where they channel it. I don't know, though. I feel like that could lead to real fights.
I would try it once.
Yeah.
However, she did say, even though that did sound almost like good advice, she did say that the movie was starting to affect her in the way that they spoke to each other. She said, Richard and I would be out with friends, and I'd hear myself say to him, "For Christ's sake, shut up, I'm not finished talking."
Oh, yeah.
And then the next morning I would think, that wasn't me, that was Martha, her character.
Oh, that actually does not seem good.
No.
Like, you would develop pretty bad habits.
I know. They did treat each other so horribly in that movie. Okay, then I just wanted to read to you just a glimpse of their life because it describes how chaotic their life was. Okay, it says, when the Italian director arrived at their hotel in Dublin, he found their household in a not unusual state of near chaos. Elizabeth had taken in a new pet, a tiny, leaping African primate known as a bush baby. Ooh. God knows where she picked it up, but it was wreaking havoc in the luxurious suite, ripping up cushions and curtains and overturning lamps. It had retreated to the bathroom, clinging to the hot water pipes while Elizabeth yelled at Richard to come immediately to rescue it, but Burton was deep in conversation with Zeffirelli on the proposed Shakespearean production. "Will you please stop talking about your damn Shakespeare and give me a hand?" Elizabeth shrieked. Burton, nursing a drink, yelled, "Will you please stop this bloody nonsense with that horrendous little monster and come and talk to this man? He's a superb Shakespearean director, and you might be lucky enough to work with him one day. Can you be more pleasant to him?" "I don't care what he thinks of me," Elizabeth retorted. "All I want is some help with my bush baby."
Oh my God. Doesn't she have kids too? Don't they both have kids? Why are you taking in a bush baby? I just looked it up and I can see some people thinking they're really cute, but they have these really crazy eyes, these bush babies.
Ooh, let me see.
They're kind of scary looking.
Bush baby.
They're little,
though.
though.
Yeah. How small is it? It kind of looks like a Furby. Oh, it's kind of cute. But yeah, it's a bit freaky too. Freaky cute. Where did I leave off? Oh, something I noticed, which you'll see soon because we'll have clips, but I noticed that her accent when she was younger was much more American, and then it became a lot more English, I think, as she's been with him.
Yeah.
She was born in England, but she mostly lived in America. And they were insanely wealthy at this point. And an interesting thing I read about them is that they started having this habit of thinking that people were always giving them things. Like, I read that this actor, Michael York, once showed Richard his old rare books, and for some reason, Richard assumed they were gifts. And this photographer, David Bailey, was showing them a new camera, and within minutes, it belonged to them.
Oh my God, it's so awkward.
Elizabeth always expected gifts from her directors because that's what she experienced when she was younger, and she let her Taming of the Shrew director, Zeffirelli, know about this little shop she wanted something from, Bulgari, which is insanely expensive, and he bought her what she wanted, this gold bracelet that once belonged to Napoleon's sister. The Napoleon.
Oh my God.
And that actor, Michael York, described them. He said, "They were like gods to be showered with offerings. They strode the world like two colossi."
They do seem really entitled.
Yeah, they do.
To say the least.
I actually wrote in my notes for us to take a break right now. What do you think?
I'm ready to do go through one more year and then take a break.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, actually, all I have for 1966 is a clip that I sent you.
All right.
So now it's 1966. They are going to be in Dr. Faustus. And I guess that was interesting. They were caught after leaving rehearsal, and it just shows them together. And yeah, I sent it to you, Mel.
All right, let me see.
Richard, how did he do it?
That was all right.
You're happy with the performance?
Rehearsal? Yes.
You waited a long time for this. Has it been worthwhile?
Well, we haven't done it yet, you know.
Well, you almost do the hardest part of it, aren't you?
Yeah. Which way do we go? No, tonight will be the hardest part.
Elizabeth, your first stage play. What's your verdict?
Oh, good gracious me. My verdict.
Your verdict
Of the play?
of yourself.
Well, I think the play has proven itself fairly good over several hundred years.
What's your verdict of yourself?
Well, I don't know. I have no verdict of myself. I was nervous.
And the audience?
I didn't fall or faint or anything.
Did you expect to?
What?
Did you expect to?
Well, I expected anything.
How was your husband off the record?
I thought he was absolutely marvellous.
Yeah.
But I always do.
I feel like in that clip you can definitely see, like, she's like being bombarded and it's kind of overwhelming, but honestly, like, it seems like their relationship to me seems pretty pleasant. Like, she's like, oh, I'm always super proud of him.
It
Like,
does. Yeah. She came off very composed. And they seem very happy. So maybe they were.
You would never know that there's a bush baby wreaking havoc at home.
No, you wouldn't. The next thing I have is another clip. So this is talking about acting on stage again, and this was a big part of Richard Burton's career because he had started as a stage actor, and people can be snobby about that and thinking that stage acting is more superior to movie acting. And in this, they're in an interview together, and basically the interviewer brings up like, oh, well, what happened to you? Like, you're not taking the stage very seriously, or you left the stage, and Elizabeth defends him. And I just think it's funny he says it kind of quietly, but try to listen because she sticks up for him, and then Richard says, Elizabeth, pull yourself together.
Oh.
And he starts like tapping her on the shoulder to stop talking. So it's interesting.
Okay.
So yeah, that's this clip.
All right, pulling this up.
Richard Burton has faced the question of whether you should have continued as an imposing and, even in the view of many people, great stage actor, or moved into the world of films, which is more commercially rewarding but perhaps not so rewarding artistically. Do you ever regret having moved into the commercial cinema?
Oh, excuse me, Richard, that makes me so angry, because he has not left the stage. That's absolute bloody rubbish. Well, last year, he just got through doing a thing here for Oxford on the stage. The year before that, what was he doing on Broadway? That was the stage. How can you say he's left the stage?
Because that is not a continuous stage career in the sense that, for example, Paul Schofield or Laurence Olivier.
He's not continuous either on the stage. He does film appearances for money.
This is the first,
and so does Paul Schofield.
But Schofield has made one film in 10 or 14 years. And Richard was at one time, after Coriolanus particularly, hailed as being potentially the greatest stage actor that England ever produced. I wonder whether, in a way, your making of Faustus, which is the story of a man who sells out for a dream almost, is perhaps comparable with your decision then.
No, I don't think so, because
It's kind of sweet of Elizabeth. Like, I find it endearing that she's sticking up for him, but she is like very animated and riled up about it. That makes me so angry. Yeah. I guess like that is a conflict in relationships too, is like when your partner speaks on your behalf, like they get upset on your behalf. Some people,
That's true.
Some people get really embarrassed by that because they're like, they don't want confrontation.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, it is a rude question, so I don't blame her for saying something.
Makes me so angry.
I thought it was kind of cute of her.
It is cute. Even the way he said it's very like soft. Elizabeth, pull yourself together. He was still a serious stage actor, but in 1967 alone, there were 3 Burton Taylor films, starring both of them: The Taming of the Shrew, Dr. Faustus and the Comedians, plus Elizabeth's film Reflection in a Golden Eye. So you can imagine it's kind of Burton Taylor overload.
Oh, yeah.
People might be starting to get a little bit sick of them. They bought a 10-passenger jet named the Elizabeth, and over the next decade they would earn approximately $88 million, which would be about $800 million today.
Wow.
And they spent 3/4 of it on furs, diamonds, paintings, clothing, travel, food, liquor, a yacht and jet. They were just ridiculously wealthy, and I thought this was crazy. If they were in Europe, they would sometimes have their favorite dishes from restaurants in LA flown to them, and vice versa, like across the world.
Oh my, like they're like getting delivery from across the world. That is so... Yeah, I mean, I don't blame the people for getting annoyed by them. Like, they're so entitled. You cannot relate to them. And so indulgent, too.
And I kept reading, they were increasingly drinking more. And I don't know how it can get more and more.
Yeah.
I don't get it. Yeah, and they were filming a movie in the country Dahomey. I hope I said that right. It's now Benin, but they were invited to this state dinner that was held in their honor with 200 guests, but they failed to show up because they were too drunk.
Oh my God.
And sometimes Richard would just disappear and Elizabeth would run around calling his name. So it was chaotic.
It's just inconsiderate.
Yep. April 1967, both Richard and Elizabeth were nominated for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. It was Burton's 5th Oscar nomination, but he couldn't bear to attend and lose again because he's lost 4 times already, so he decided not to go. She has won before. I know. And she wanted to go, and all of her people were urging her to attend because she was seen as the frontrunner that year. Yeah. And then Richard told Elizabeth that he had dreamed of her plane crashing on the way to California.
Oh my, and her previous husband had died in a plane crash.
Mm-hmm. They were in France at the time. Yeah. So Elizabeth decided to stay with Richard and not go to the Academy Award. Her official excuse was that they were still shooting The Comedians, their movie, and that they couldn't leave, but it wasn't really true. Richard did end up losing, but Elizabeth did win.
And she wasn't there. That sucks. There. And that's so manipulative of him because I feel like he just couldn't bear. She was a front runner. He couldn't bear her winning and him losing.
And to say, I mean, maybe it's true, but I kind of doubt it that he had a dream that her plane crashed.
Yeah.
Yeah, to pull that, like, I have a bad feeling about this.
I know, seriously. And because she already has trauma related to plane crashes.
That's
so like
true.
She's more likely to take that seriously. I mean, hey, like we all have sometimes a bad feeling about things. You hear those rare stories where it's like, and then it came true. But most of the time it doesn't if you have a dream that like something crazy happens. So
it's too bad.
Yeah. I guess
it happens sometimes. Like we've seen people not be there to accept their award, but it's really disappointing when that happens.
At least she won once before, but imagine you're home and then you hear that you won and you're like, fuck, I wasn't there.
Yeah, and you didn't even have to be home.
Yeah.
It's annoying.
I guess maybe you're like, well, at least I had my life because I didn't die in the plane crash. But
she was really awesome in that movie, though. I can see why she won. I was impressed. 1968, you know, despite all of the fighting, they were still really crazy about each other. The book that I read actually had excerpts from Richard's diary that he wrote in that Elizabeth Taylor actually provided for the book, which is pretty cool. And in the diary, it wasn't Elizabeth Taylor that provided it. It was his wife, his later wife. In his diary at the time, Richard wrote about Elizabeth and said she was looking infinitely sexy in the shortest miniskirt I've ever seen. It barely... And when she moved, it didn't, covered her crotch.
Oh my God.
So he's still really passionate, you know, really into her. The Burtons decided to buy a boat and live at sea rather than have a permanent home in any country. They would simply sail to wherever they needed to go and just dock there. And I think it was mostly to avoid taxes. Their boat was called the Charisma, which merged their daughters' names, Kate, Liza, and Maria's names. But it makes me kind of sad because Jessica isn't part of it, which is the mentally disabled daughter.
That's terrible.
Sad.
Yeah.
I know.
What did they call it? The Charisma?
The Charisma, yeah.
Charisma. And what are the daughters' names?
Kate, Liza, and Maria.
Kate. So they could have done like Khalees America or something. I don't know. That
could have figured it out.
That's ridiculous.
I know.
I don't trust them.
The boat had 7 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms with a crew of 8 people. Their movie, Dr. Faustus, premiered and had terrible reviews. It was a financial disappointment. And this is the beginning of a stretch of films that they did together, bombing, getting poor reviews, and the public starting to turn on them. And I thought it was funny in the book Furious Love, they wrote, "What the press giveth, the press taketh away."
Yeah, kind of. Honestly, it reminds me of Ben Affleck.
Yes,
and
I was thinking about that.
Like,
and that affected their relationship, too.
Yeah, the bad films, because people were like, oh, these people suck, and they're overexposed, and we just don't want to hear about them.
Yep.
And I feel like Taylor Swift really runs that risk lately, especially with Travis. I hate to say it.
What? Is there anything new about Travis?
No, but it's just like you have to hear about them all the time. And like, okay, never mind. I don't want to get into it.
What?
I was going to say one football season is enough, but then it makes it sound like I'm like one of those people like, I don't want to see Taylor Swift on football. Like, it's not that. It's just like, it is kind of forced upon you.
Yes. I will say I do feel like it has died down a little bit since her album came out.
I think so too. But I think
it would be wise to keep it that way.
I think so too. But obviously she's just living her life and she's at the game watching her boyfriend play. This is different. Mm-hmm. They are deliberately choosing to act in movies together. And so, like, it's not just the movie. And, you know, keep in mind, like, back then, they didn't have as much movies and TV shows to watch. So it's like everybody has to watch, like, the same actors on screen together over and over again. That would get so boring.
Yeah, especially if your movie theater in town only has like 2 movies or something.
Yeah, it's like
it keeps being Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton.
Yeah.
Oh my god. I mean, I think they were talented actors, but let's say it's just not your thing. I mean, that would be annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah, they started to realize that they actually like sat down and wrote down all their movies, and they realized that they were more successful when they were separate. But they did keep acting together. It wasn't the end yet. May 1968, this is part of the reason I called them Bejeweled. Richard bought at auction the Krupp diamond for Elizabeth that was worth nearly $2 million.
Wow.
It was a very big deal. That same month, their movie Boom, with an exclamation mark, came out to terrible reviews. And yeah, I actually wrote my notes kind of reminds me of J-Lo and Ben Affleck. It was taking a toll. And late 1968, it was just a bad year for them. Elizabeth had gained weight for the movie and I think was struggling to lose it, and she was having a lot of uterine pain and she couldn't work through the pain, and she actually had a hysterectomy.
Oh wow.
And Richard was so nervous for her, on edge, and was drinking, and he actually experienced a tragedy shortly after this. He and his brother Ifer went to their house in Switzerland and they were drinking a lot. They were at this like cafe partying, and it was 3 a.m. and Ifer left the cafe to go to the house to open it up, because I think they hadn't been there for a while, so he was gonna, I don't know, turn all the lights on and unlock the gates and stuff like that. So Ifer went over there and he was stumbling around in the dark. He was searching for a light switch to turn on the outside light, and his brother Ifer slipped on a grill or something and he fell against a windowsill and broke his neck, and it left him completely paralyzed.
Oh gosh.
And it was just a total like random freak accident, but Richard was distraught because that was his favorite brother, you know, who he looked up to the most, and he felt so guilty for it, that like somehow it was his fault, like he wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for him. And I really like, after reading about them, to me this incident is the big turning point in Richard's life and their relationship, because he just became like so self-destructive after this.
Oh, I don't know why I thought you were going to say the opposite. Obviously, it just goes downhill from there. I thought you were going to say he like starts taking things seriously and... Oh gosh.
He wrote, "I loved Ifer the best. He was nearest to a father to me." And yeah, their movies were continuing to lose money.
But he didn't die, right? The brother
didn't die.
Yeah.
No, but he was just completely paralyzed. So I think it was just really hard for him to see. And his brother would continue to struggle. And he did die young. So it's so sad. But they were spending a lot of time with the Duke and Duchess of Windsor, Edward and Wallace.
Wow.
Probably related to them the most. And there was this one night the four of them were hanging out, and Richard picked up Wallace and swung her around the room, and apparently Elizabeth got so mad that she locked Richard in the spare bedroom that night, and Richard tried to kick down the door, shattering the plaster, and then he wrote in his diary, "I better be off to work because I behaved with a fair amount of disgrace yesterday. It is not a good idea to drink so much."
Oh my god, that's crazy. There was a lock from the outside of the room.
I know. That is weird.
Especially if it's the guest room.
I know. How did that work?
Yeah, well, you just invite guests over and then you can lock them in.
That's such a good point, Mel.
Odd. Wow, that's crazy that this episode connects to last episode. No, actually 2 episodes ago. Wow.
2 episodes ago, yeah. But about Elizabeth, he wrote in his diary, "I love that woman so much sometimes that I cannot believe my luck." He was pretty romantic. Like, he wrote a lot of letters to Elizabeth, sometimes even while she was home in the other room, which is cute. And he wrote about her, "She is a wildly exciting love mistress. She is shy and witty. She is nobody's fool. She's a brilliant actress. She is beautiful beyond the dreams of pornography. She can be arrogant and willful. She is clever and loving. She tolerates my impossibilities and my drunkenness. She is an ache in the stomach when I'm away from her, and she loves me, and I love her till I die."
Aw, that is pretty romantic.
It is.
So then what happens?
What happens? First, more jewels. Burton bid on another famous jewel, La Peregrina, a pear-shaped pearl that had been given to Mary Tudor, the first daughter of King Henry VIII. I know. Given to Mary Tudor by King Philip of Spain, and it was such a famous pearl that it had its own biography. Apparently it was found, sorry, this is like unrelated, but it was found by a slave in Panama who's given his freedom for it. And then the Bonapartes, like Napoleon, owned it in the 1800s. And oh my gosh, it's just crazy. Like, all these royals owned it. And this Prince Alfonso from Spain wanted to return it to Spain, but he was outbid by Richard Burton.
Wow.
But it was $37,000, which surprises me because it's less than that diamond he bought. But it was just crazy. And crazier than that is that when she got this pearl that was so historic, she almost lost it. It fell off the necklace and she couldn't find it anywhere. And then she saw that the dog was gnawing at it.
The dog?
Yes.
Oh my god, this has been like centuries of the royal family, and the dog has it. That just kind of shows how careless these people are, though.
Elizabeth.
Jeez.
And then he bought her that same year the most expensive diamond in the world. He outbid Aristotle Onassis. He bought it for $1.1 million. And Aristotle Onassis was supposed to be, I think, the wealthiest man in the world. So that's crazy. And to get this diamond, it took 3 couriers. 2 of them were decoys.
Wow.
3 weeks to get the diamond. 3 men carried identical briefcases, only one with the Taylor Burton diamond in it, and all of them were escorted by armed security guards.
Oh my god.
So insane.
I wouldn't want something that expensive. I feel like that's so dangerous.
I know.
When would you ever wear it? I would worry someone would cut my ear off.
I know.
Wait, were they earrings, you said?
No, I think it was a diamond, and I think it was turned into a necklace.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and what's silly is that I think they had a replica made, and she mostly wore the replica.
Yeah, that's just
because it was too expensive to wear.
Yeah, that's
because
so silly.
like people might try to kill her or something to get it, you know.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I guess it's like an investment. You can sell it later on, and it is only more valuable because Elizabeth Taylor owned it. But it seems like a status thing more than anything. Even if I was super rich, I was saying this to my boyfriend the other day, even if I was super, super rich and like money was no object to me, I still would never be able to justify spending money on something like that. Or like, I would never buy like a Rolex or something. Like, I wouldn't be able to justify that. That's just me.
Yeah. Lately, I do want more quality jewelry. Like, I would like something that's real gold or real silver or something. But I don't need like something that's $10,000 or whatever. I mean, $1 million, like, why do you need a necklace that's that expensive? It's just insane.
Yeah, something you can't even wear is just a total waste.
Yeah, it's obscene. And they kept fighting despite all these jewels. Richard could say really nasty, cruel things to her, but Elizabeth would turn that to her advantage, making him pay for things he said with jewels and other things she wanted. Yeah, so like if he was mean to her, she'd be like, "That was mean. Now you have to buy me something." But crazy enough, Richard, they were drinking so much, he was told by a doctor that he would die very soon if he didn't stop drinking.
Wow, so did he?
So he did stop drinking. Yeah. No, I wasn't sure what you were asking about.
If he died.
He did stop drinking, but apparently Elizabeth found it very hard to adjust to having a sober husband because part of their dynamic was drinking and having fun.
That really, we talked about this with Blake Shelton and Miranda Lambert on the Patreon, if you guys want to listen to that. That when drinking is something that bonds a couple, that's not really a good recipe.
No, it's not.
Unfortunately.
Richard was nominated for an Academy Award, but he lost again.
Oh, God. Does he ever win? Does he ever win an Academy Award?
No.
Okay.
He's nominated 7 times.
Hey, I mean, that's an honor in itself.
It is. And I just want to say, sorry to bring it up again, but everyone complaining about Greta Gerwig is like, all right.
I know.
Richard Burton, everyone, he was nominated 7 times.
Yeah.
So chill out.
Greta has made like 3 films.
I know. Now it's the 70s, 1970. They appeared in an episode of Here's Lucy with Lucille Ball, and their episode was the highest rated on the show's entire run. So even though it's kind of like Taylor Swift, even though everyone's saying, oh, we're so sick of them, people still turned out to see them. And this was crazy to me. She was still having issues with her back, and she had a surgery for it. And while Elizabeth was in the hospital, privacy was just completely invaded. They didn't have the automated doors and things like that we have now in hospitals. And strangers would just walk into her room to look at her, and while she was in bed. And apparently a hippie, in quotes, wandered into her room just to have a look. And it really scared them because the Manson murders had just happened. So yeah, they were really freaked out.
That's creepy.
That is not okay.
No.
And then I have this interview I wanted to show you guys. They talk about how they like to fight.
This weekend is the 6th wedding anniversary of you two. At the time, there were a great many people who...
What do you mean, legal?
Yeah. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh. Listen, well, if you are so devoted to each other, as I think you are, what about all these rows? You can't pick up a movie magazine or anything about Liz and Dick battling?
No, I must say we enjoy fighting. I think that fighting with somebody you love and are really sure of, and if you're really sure of yourself in your love, I think having a fight, an out-and-out, outrageous, ridiculous fight, is one of the greatest exercises in marital togetherness. I think
especially if you have no really weak points.
Oh, I see.
You see, you do not attack the weak points. They're perfectly obvious in Elizabeth and myself. So when I insult Elizabeth, which I frequently do, I do not attack that soft spot in the underbelly. And when she attacks me, double chins.
You bloody well have.
Yeah, she's got a slightly fat belly. I never use
Well, I've
those
got his
things.
pockmarks,
Well, we can attack those things, but they're superficial.
No, the ethics in fighting.
You're more vulnerable, I'm sure, on other things than that.
Well, yes, I am, yeah. We've always had, of course, the enormous problem, Elizabeth and myself, of my being essentially a stage actor and Elizabeth a film actress. And so we frequently have lovely quarrels about that, where Elizabeth describes stage actors as being full of rubbish, and I reply
just more pontifical.
Okay. Oh my God. Right. When I insult Elizabeth, as I frequently do, I don't go below the belt. She's like, about my double chin? You have. See, here's the thing. I think that like playful banter, like some people flirt in a way where they like to like tease each other and be mean, and if like both parts, like some people that like does get them on and like get them going, and they really like that. But like, I don't know, a double chin, commenting on something like that, I would cry if my boyfriend commented on that.
He always kind of poked fun at her being a little chubby, like he called her lumpy. She has insanely thick skin, though. I kept reading that. Yeah. That she really didn't let things get to her. Yeah. That's part of why she can just, hurt people, because it doesn't hurt her. But isn't that interesting?
I do have to say, she was so beautiful. Like,
she was
gorgeous lady.
Just perfect.
Yeah.
I love her eyebrows and eyes, and
Yeah.
it's just
You can-
absolutely
you-
beautiful.
You can see why she mesmerized people.
This might sound bad, but maybe she cut this out. I don't know if Abby's listening, but I feel like she would be into Richard Burton.
Why do you say that?
Just seems like her type.
A manly man, yeah.
Yeah. Sometime this year, too, Richard again said that Boston, of all places, is the worst for mobs. So just wanted to shout out Boston for that. There was more spending money lavishly, health problems, battling alcoholism, which, interestingly, Richard Burton never admitted he had. He never considered himself an alcoholic. He just said he liked to drink. They went to Budapest for Richard's movie Bluebeard, and some people were appalled by their display of wealth in a communist country and just a lack of sensitivity to, where they were.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people were pretty poor at the time there. And then sadly, March 21st, 1972, Richard's beloved brother, Efer Jenkins, died, and Richard was devastated.
Yeah.
And after writing about his brother's death, he put down his diary and didn't touch it again for 8 years.
Oh, wow.
And until this point, he had actually been sober. Elizabeth had been drinking still, but he had been sober since he was told he would die, but he started drinking again. And he just kind of gave up on his life. Like, he just started being nastier, just not taking care of himself at all. Later that month, it's crazy that they did this. Like, his brother just died, and I think, 10 days later, they did this 2-night interview on TV, and they were both really clearly drunk and out of it during it, and Elizabeth later admitted that she had made a fool of herself in this interview, but Richard didn't care. And for the first time in their 8-year relationship, Richard became unfaithful.
Oh, wow. I'm surprised it took him so long, honestly.
I know. I mean, it does seem like they were really in love with each other, despite how dysfunctional it was. Because he was always a cheater with Sybil.
Yeah.
So it was pretty impressive that he wasn't, but he, like I said, he just kind of gave up after his brother died, and he hooked up with his co-star Natalie Dellen. And I can't believe this. In this saga that we've been doing with the, Debbie, Eddie, Liz, this is the 3rd time this has happened, because at 5 a.m. Elizabeth called his hotel and said,
oh my God.
"Get that woman out of my bed."
Hey,
Isn't
you
that
reap what you
weird?
sow,
Why does
right?
this keep
Yeah.
happening? Somebody calling a hotel and being like, who's in my bed right now?
Oh my God.
So she was pissed, but they didn't break up. They patched things up, and he bought her a large sapphire ring. Richard then, I guess he was trying to change his scene. He announced that he was going to teach a literature course at Oxford, and he would commute from London while Elizabeth shot a film there. And he did teach a semester, and he seemed to really enjoy it.
Oh, that's nice.
And was popular with the students. I know. I don't know why that didn't continue. After this cheating incident, Elizabeth became increasingly more possessive. And I read this story about while she was on a film set, while Richard was filming a movie, a girl had been invited to Richard's dressing room. I don't know why. I don't really understand the circumstances, but I don't know if it was a trap, but Elizabeth was hiding behind the sofa. And when the girl walked into the room, Elizabeth jumped up holding a broken vodka bottle and chased the girl out of the room.
Oh my God.
It's more violent, but it kind of reminds me of Chuck and Blair. Like, do you remember when on Gossip Girl they used to do this thing where Chuck would flirt with a girl and then bring her back to his place, and then Blair would be waiting to yell at the girl? It was like a game to them.
Yeah, wait, maybe.
I don't know.
Imagine being chased by Elizabeth Taylor.
I know.
With a weapon. That would keep you up at night.
That is scary. And Richard said he started to hate the movies that they did about rich people, and it seemed like he started to become disgusted with their own life, and I was just tired of it and tired of the fighting and the chaos. And Elizabeth was starting to lose his patience for his drinking, but she herself wouldn't stop drinking either. And then July 4th, 1973, I don't know why it was the 4th of July, but Elizabeth issued a handwritten statement saying, "I am convinced it would be a good and constructive idea of Richard and I to separate for a while. Maybe we loved each other too much. I never believed such a thing was possible, but we have been in each other's pockets constantly, never being apart for matters of life and death, and I believe it has caused a temporary breakdown of communication. I believe with all my heart that separation will ultimately bring us back to where we should be, and that's together.
Who is she writing this to? The public?
I guess the press, yeah.
Oh, wow.
I know. I feel like she did not need to do that.
No, it's too much information.
They're on a break.
Mm-hmm.
They're on a break.
And when is this?
This is July 4th, 1973.
Okay. But do they end up divorcing?
Yes. This is not a breakup yet. There's more to come. Richard did enlist a doctor to help detoxify from alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And just so you know, at this point, she's 41 and he's 47 or so. Even though they were on a break, supposedly, they did still keep in touch.
Mm.
And the break only lasted 2 weeks. They reunited in Rome at the airport. And I wrote in my notes, did they really need a statement for only 2 weeks?
Yeah.
But maybe she didn't know it would be that short.
Maybe she thought if she released a statement, she'd be more likely to stick to it.
That's true. They reunited, they got back together, they kissed each other at this airport, and they were so happy, but their reunion only lasted 9 days.
Oh,
because
no.
Richard started drinking again and becoming intolerable to Elizabeth, and they separated again, and this time began divorce proceedings.
Wow.
And Elizabeth told her friend, I don't want to be that much in love ever again.
Oh, that's a devastating feeling.
Both of them started having flings with other people pretty much right away.
Yeah.
In November, I guess a couple months later, Elizabeth was in the hospital again for an ovarian cyst.
Mm-hmm.
And after her surgery, she had heard that her friend Lawrence Harvey had died, and she just felt completely lost, like just horrible. You know, she's in the hospital, then she hears her friend died, and she called Richard and said, can I come home? And Richard immediately flew to her as fast as he could, and they were back together.
Oh, okay. Seems like they're both, I mean, they're not in great places. Going through a breakup takes a lot of stamina. Like, you have to, like, be willing to, like, grieve that person and, like, push yourself to, like, go through that. Doesn't seem like they're both in a place mentally to be able to go through that, even if they should break up.
It's hard. Yeah, I guess his first words when he saw her was, hello, Lumpy, how are you feeling?
Oh my god,
she
Lumpy.
I know, but I guess that was his nickname for her. And then she was smiling and all giddy and said, hi, Pockface.
Oh my god.
And they were hugging and squeezing and kissing each other, and they were all happy. But despite being back together, he was still back to his out-of-control ways. He randomly met an 18-year-old girl in front of a local jail. Okay, 2 red flags here.
Yeah.
While filming a movie, and he invited her to his trailer, and he bought her a $450 ring.
Oh.
Not as much as the rings he buys Elizabeth, obviously, but still, $450, that's a lot. Elizabeth was pissed when she heard about this, like, what the hell are you doing? And he was really falling apart, like, he was shaking, he looked terrible,
Yeah.
he couldn't get any of his lines right in acting, and he was rushed to the hospital, and he was told that he would be dead in 2 weeks if he didn't detoxify from alcohol. He had a temperature of 104, his kidneys were at the point of collapse, he was dying, basically. He was in the hospital for 6 weeks. Elizabeth stayed in touch by phone, but she couldn't really take it anymore, and quietly she filed for divorce. April 25th, 1974, they publicly announced divorce.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
before
this
that,
is their
like,
first divorce, but they had separated twice.
They had yes.
Yeah. Okay.
They had started the process of divorce before, but it didn't stick.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Also, I just wanted to say, like, I know they made a lot of money, but it seems like their spending is reckless. It seems like eventually, if you keep buying all this expensive jewelry, like, you have other expenses too, it seems like you would run out of money.
Yep. And that's kind of the reason Richard kept acting and doing a lot of movies that he didn't even think were that great, because their lifestyle was so expensive and they couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah.
I hate to read about that. I hate when people do that. Like, you have such opportunity. Why are you being so reckless?
Yeah.
It drives me crazy. Crazy! Also, 4 months later, after their divorce, Richard became engaged.
What?
To the Princess Elizabeth of Yugoslavia.
Oh my god. How did he meet her?
I don't even know, but
that's insane.
And Elizabeth was very upset when she heard this, the other Elizabeth, and experienced painful back spasms when she heard. But the engagement only lasted a few months, and it was called off December 1974. And she had been seeing this guy, Henry Weinberg, and she called that off in 1975.
Oh.
And in 1975, Richard and Elizabeth agreed to meet at her Swiss lawyer's office to discuss their financial settlement. It seemed like it was supposed to be all business.
Yep.
But when they saw each other, they were struck by how good the other looked.
Oh, yeah, I bet they both brought their A game, too.
Yes. Richard had stopped drinking again, and he looked slim and healthy, and she was more slimmed down, and they just looked good, and they fell into each other's arms, tears streaming, and they were back together.
Okay.
Elizabeth wanted to remarry, but Richard was hesitant after all they'd been through. Understandable.
I feel like that would be kind of devastating. Like, you're back together, but, okay, we used to be husband and wife. How do you just be boyfriend and girlfriend?
I know. That is strange.
I can kind of get why you would want to get remarried, because it's like, let's just pick up where we left off.
Yeah, you're right. That would be hard, I think, to think like, yeah, we were more serious before, where if you still love each other as much, but it's almost like a demotion. I don't know. It's strange.
Yeah.
Elizabeth had an x-ray that revealed a spot on her lungs that they thought could be cancer. It turned out to be just scar tissue, and they were so happy, but they had been really nervous. While they were celebrating the good news, Richard got down on one knee and proposed marriage. All was happy, but that night he went out and got drunk.
Oh, God.
It's so hard to hear. October 10th, 1975, they married again on the banks of the Chobe River in Botswana. They had always liked going to Africa because I guess they got less attention there. And they just liked the beautiful nature and everything. About a month later, after their second wedding, Elizabeth went back to the hospital for her back and neck pain, and she wanted Richard to stay with her, but this time he didn't want to. And he wheeled her to the hospital, and when a photographer asked him to kiss for the camera, he refused.
Oh.
And in December, they returned to their chalet in Switzerland, and he went on the ski slopes one day to, just get away. And on the slopes, he noticed a tall, stunning blonde woman, a former model named Susie Hunt, and he was captivated by her, but Elizabeth didn't know. He began seeing this Susie Hunt, and then he signed on for 3 months in the stage play Equus, which I always remember is the play that Daniel Radcliffe was in.
Oh, yeah.
And at this time, it's crazy because they were just like so happy to be back together and remarried, but they were sleeping in separate bedrooms. I don't know if that's because someone was snoring or something, but it's strange. And he left Switzerland to begin rehearsals for his play in New York. Elizabeth stayed in Switzerland, but Susie went with him.
Oh, no.
Unbeknownst to Elizabeth. And upset that Richard had left without her, Elizabeth took up with a 37-year-old advertising executive that she'd met at a discotheque.
Okay, so they're both...
Yeah.
They're
both cheating.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's not I feel like they're both really possessive and jealous, though. I don't see that going well.
Nope. Richard called Elizabeth from New York, she's in Switzerland, and asked her to come to New York. So she did. She was all happy. He greeted her at the airport with a big kiss, but when they got to the hotel, she checked into a separate suite, which is kind of odd.
Yeah.
Richard had been doing pretty good health-wise. Susie didn't really drink and was actually a pretty healthy companion for him. But Elizabeth didn't know that. I don't think she even knew Susie existed. And she could tell something wasn't right, though, because he was acting distant and tentative. And that's when he told her that he wanted a divorce.
Oh, my God. To be with Susie?
Yep.
My God. Wait.
Apparently had only invited Elizabeth there to tell her that he had fallen in love with Susie Hunt.
That's terrible.
I know.
I do think if you want to break up with someone and you want to do it in person, you go to them. Do not make them travel to you, and then they have to get back on the plane. What? Yeah, that's so terrible.
Selfish.
Especially because the person's probably excited to see you.
Yeah.
You should surprise them. Maybe not surprise them. I don't know.
I do feel bad. Despite everything, I do feel bad for Elizabeth. And she started yelling and said, why the hell did you have me come all the way here to tell me that? And she left New York the next day.
Yeah, I don't blame her.
She agreed to a divorce, and then she flew to LA and checked into the Beverly Hills Hotel because she couldn't bear to be in any of their shared homes. And she withdrew from hosting the Tonys.
Oh, wow.
August 1st, 1976, their divorce was finalized. Okay, just a little more about their lives, because crazy enough, it doesn't stop there. Richard and Susie did marry.
Okay.
And they were together for a pretty long time, but they divorced 6 years later. So it wasn't forever. Elizabeth quickly remarried the politician John Warner Jr., a wealthy Virginian Republican, and he became a senator. And while she was with him, she put her career aside to be a senator's wife, which wasn't that unusual. It might sound crazy, but she had always talked about wanting to retire from acting. But she did become very bored and restless, and I think felt kind of suppressed in that relationship, and they divorced after 4 years.
I wonder if she married him just to be like, to have someone else, since Richard left for somebody.
I know. In 1982, Elizabeth threw a large gala celebration for her 50th birthday, and she arrived at the party arm in arm with Richard Burton.
What?
What the heck? They danced together and maybe spent the night together.
Oh my
The press
God.
was ecstatic that they might be reuniting. Were they? And then the two of them agreed to star in a play together, and they would tour the country. It was called Private Lives, and it started out great. They were so happy. This is awesome. Reunion. I'm guessing that they were romantic together.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, they couldn't stand each other. They were so over it. It was like the last nail in the coffin. Like, Elizabeth was late all the time drinking. They were fighting. Yeah, and it just ended in disaster. I think they stopped showing up, and like the understudies had to stand in, and Richard said he would not act with her understudy anymore, and he just disappeared, and it was not good.
Yeah, I guess sometimes with those relationships, like we talked in the beginning about how many times you have to break up with someone, some of those relationships might be so intense that you have to do it over and over and over again until you're like, wait, this actually is boring. I actually don't like this person.
I feel like by the time they did this play together,
yeah,
in the 80s, they realized, like, I cannot take this anymore.
Because they probably, like, spent all that time longing for the other one, too, and building it up in their head. And then once they get back together, they're older. Now they've had other partners. They've probably, hopefully, matured a little bit. Yeah. And then it's like, oh, wait, this doesn't hit the way it used to.
And the play was getting bad reviews, so it was just... Then, on a whim, it seems, Richard married his young assistant, Sally Hay.
Oh.
Yep, so that was his fourth marriage. But sadly, his marriage to Sally Hay didn't last too long. Because August 4th, 1984, Richard Burton died of a cerebral hemorrhage at age 58 years old.
That is very young, but... I mean, writing was on the wall there.
It was. It was
That's
for
sad.
like decades.
Yeah.
Elizabeth fainted when she heard the news, and she later said, "I was still in love with him the day he died. I think he still loved me too." His wife Sally asked her not to attend the funeral because it would be a huge distraction.
Yeah.
So she didn't go, but she did visit his grave, and it's kind of sad. The paparazzi were like hounding her, and her bodyguards had to hold open umbrellas to shield her to get a little privacy. But she did apparently go the next morning to see his grave, and then she went to Wales to visit his family. It's sad. And then just to wrap up Elizabeth Taylor, because I don't know if we'll cover her again, probably not, but in 1988 she attended the Betty Ford Clinic rehab after relapsing with prescription drugs because she had a problem with that. And it's interesting, she was one of the first celebrities to be open about going to rehab. Like before that, people were very private about it, or you know, it was kind of a new thing. And I do appreciate that about Elizabeth. I feel like she's always been very open and vulnerable. But while she was there, she met this young, good-looking construction worker and former trucker, Larry Fortensky, who was 20 years younger than her, and she married him, her seventh husband.
Wow.
They were married for 5 years.
Oh.
In the late 90s, they weren't together until death do us part. In the late 90s, Elizabeth did survive a brain tumor, which is incredible, and she did also lots of work for AIDS research and funding, because she actually, I never mentioned it because it didn't really fit in the story, but she did have a lot of gay men friends that she was really close to, even back in like the 50s, and she and her friend founded the National AIDS Research Foundation, and it's pretty amazing. Like, even when people were terrified of the disease, like they didn't know what it was, people were afraid to like even be close to people with AIDS at the time. She did things like visit them in the hospital and sit in bed with them to show that like they weren't dangerous and they weren't untouchable. So
that's
really nice of her. Yeah. And I guess till the end of her days, she had a photo of Richard hung in her bedroom, her and Richard, in an oval frame. And I think she always loved him and he always loved her. It's just they couldn't always be together, you know, they couldn't really make it work. She died on my sister's birthday, March 23rd, 2011.
Oh, I was going to say, it does seem like she loved Richard Burton the most. But
it does.
I mean, Mike Todd sadly passed away, so who knows what could have been. But
that's true.
It seems like, I mean, she has such a fiery personality. I feel like Richard Burton was like her true equal in a sense. But like together, those two personalities would never work. What do they call that? Like a twin flame? Or two people who, it's like the opposite of, or different from a soulmate. It's like two people who are like, they pass through each other's lives and they connect and it's so strong, but like they're not really meant to be together forever. It's just...
Yeah.
What did they say? Everyone's for a season or a reason or whatever.
Yeah. I think definitely they meant a lot to each other, and it was obviously really passionate, but it just wasn't stable. But sometimes there are people like that in your life that make a huge impact, but they're not really meant to maybe be in your life forever.
Yeah, exactly. But like, it doesn't mean that they're not any less than what they were, if that makes sense. Like, even if you had to break up, some relationships maybe are not meant to be till death do us part, but that doesn't mean it wasn't like successful for what it was.
And you can still have a relationship with someone, like, this might sound weird, but even if you don't talk to them.
I agree.
You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. This came up in our Carly Simon and James Taylor, another Taylor.
Oh.
Taylor. Taylor. I wonder if they're related. And Carly said something like, I've accepted the fact that, like, I still love him and I'll always love him, which I think is really therapeutic for some people to hear, because they might really struggle to get over someone thinking they have to fall out of love with them. But you can still love someone and accept that you are not with them.
I agree.
And that you're better off not being with them.
So that was Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton.
Wow.
Thank you for listening.
What a flagship episode. Thanks, Raquel. So next week is our last episode before summer break.
Yes. Okay, next week's episode, believe it or not, is connected to this saga that I've been hosting with the Debbie, Eddie, Liz, Richard. But it's none of those people. It's not any of those four, but it is related to them. This person is connected to them, and it's a relationship that stands on its own. People have requested this relationship.
Yeah.
You know, without any connection to Elizabeth Burton or Debbie Reynolds or whatever. So, I don't know, Mel, do you think that's enough of a hint?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
And then on our Instagram, before the episodes come out, we usually tease with a picture and people guess. So if you want to check that out for another hint, if you just can't wait.
On Tuesday
before the episode comes out. And yes, we are going to be going on a little break for the summer. So our next episode's Patreon only. And if you want to join the Patreon, now is your time to do so, because you won't be able to join it while we're on a break, which is so annoying. Like, it's not up to us, but Patreon just does it that way. If we pause payments, people can't join. So we want to just get the message out there, because we have so many Patreon episodes that if there's one that you really want to listen to, this is the best time to sign up, because you'll pay $5 and then you'll get to listen to all the episodes you want, and then we'll resume back in August.
Yep, and that'll be like 42 episodes.
Yeah.
Or so. So
I think it's like 45 because we have a lot of episodes that are like,
oh yeah,
like updates and stuff like that too.
That's true. More than 40. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on this Whirlwind Wednesday.
Yep.
And we'll get back together next week.
Yep. Bye.
Is your heart filled with pain? Shine